One thing about archaeology is it's a very hands-on and a very engaging field. In the classroom, we can talk a lot about how you do archaeology, but doing it yourself changes it entirely. And I think generally, speaking of science, this is an active science project. So students are involved in a research process from start to finish. This is an archaeology field school. We are interested in this particular site, 218 East Maxwell, and the history of this building. And we're interested in how the landscape of this lot and all of the surrounding buildings on East Maxwell changed as it was integrated into UK's campus. So to have a project that's really local means that students have increased accessibility to these kinds of opportunities so that they can do archaeology in their own hometown or in the local place where they are living while they're students here. And that opens up doors to this research experience that can sometimes be hard to get through because of cost or access issues, because of the kind of general way that archaeological training can happen in other contexts.
It's the first of the university's kind. We're kind of out here and we're learning the ins and outs of archaeology in a campus environment. I'd say it's unique because based on what we've learned about the site, it's like once you get down to a certain level, it's very undisturbed underneath the soil. So it's like you're able to just dig down and you're able to actually get a good collective journey into the history.
I don't know, it's kind of more of a bigger puzzle piece than I originally thought. I thought, honestly, I was just gonna show up and just dig all day and then, be a lot of dirt, repeat. But we've learned a lot about just how to all the background information of, okay, how do you map out the location of a spot and the different mapping systems with that.
Most of the things that we uncover after analysis will end up at the William S. Webb Museum of Anthropology. It's a repository for collections across the Commonwealth as well as beyond. We'll be digitizing some of the artifacts and some of the maps and images that we have created, so it'll be accessible to multiple different parts of the public as we move forward. I think it's always fun to get out of the classroom and apply what you're learning, what you've heard in lecture, what you read in your textbook or in articles. And so it's fun to kind of imagine what the life was like of the person who might have dropped these buttons, or the life of the people who ate off of these fragments of plates and teacups that we find. It's a really engaging and very, very real way to access that history. So I think teaching and treating these students as researchers, as scholars, is really important because they know that they have the capacity to make these decisions and interpret data and analyze what they're seeing. But I'm also hoping that these students really take away from this the experience of being researchers themselves.